Jacksonville was a really special place for me because I feel like communally, it was a great scene. It was so small that if you did something, you end up doing it with everybody that was doing it in town.
Mhm.
So consequently, being the 16, 17-year-old jazz guy, I had a chance to play with Bunky Green. I was playing with Kevin Bells. I was playing with, Bill Prince and, JB Scott, like the whole scene. I think that's really special because most cities, if you're younger, you don't really get to those older artists until you go to college or whatever. But because Jacksonville was so small, the scene afforded me that honor and that privilege.
Yeah. Is that why, you never left? I know a lot of musicians kind of start in Jacksonville and then move to, bigger and better, I guess, places. Is that the reason why you never really left?
Well, I don't know how much you know my story because I
Well,
did
I
leave.
know that you did leave, but you came back. So,
But yeah,
I know you left, but you came back. So
yeah, I mean, I left for 20 years essentially. I mean, but to your point of what you're kind of speaking about is the nonprofit. So basically, I left in 2001, and I mean, I would always come back and visit, but I left in 2001, and then I started Don't Miss a Beat with my family in 2008. So to your point, there was definitely like that sort of 8 to 9 year period where I didn't really do a lot. And even to be honest, when I came back and started the nonprofit, I still didn't do, like I was focused on the nonprofit, but I didn't do anything musically. So I didn't start to really engage in the Jacksonville scene really until about a few years ago. So though my nonprofit is, my family's nonprofit is 13 years old, I personally did not start doing stuff until recently. Like I now have a jam session at Wildcrafters. Probably the last couple of years, I've been invited to be part of various things in the city as an artist. But for the first 10 to 11 years of Don't Miss a Beat, people didn't really know that I was actually frustrated because I was all over the world playing in festivals, touring, winning Grammys, and I would come to Jacksonville and nobody would ask me to do anything.
yeah.
So it's actually that's why I respond to you in the way I did, because really I was ignored for many years because it was kind of like, oh, Ulysses left. He's a Juilliard guy now. He's big time. He doesn't have time for us little Jacksonville city folk. And I'm not saying what I assume. I'm telling you what people said to me.
Yeah.
And so, and to the point where even our nonprofit organization was ignored, for many years, and was not really supported by the Jacksonville art scene. Now, recently, as of the last few years, we've been awarded various grants and we've been, supported and stuff like that. But I mean, for the most part, it's just recently been an embracing environment, so that's why, to your point, yeah, I mean, I left, but I also wanted to keep these ties to the city, but I also wasn't necessarily congratulated for that. I mean, I always say to people, Jacksonville's such a funny town because here I am, this Jacksonville local, going away to like make my city proud and help people to understand my city. And I was almost kind of treated negatively for it versus, when you leave any other city and people are like, oh my God, you're here, you're from LA, and when you go back to LA, like I worked with Christian McBride for many years, and he's from Philadelphia. And every time we went back to Philadelphia, it was like a homecoming for him. Or Kurt Elling, every time he went back to Chicago, it was a homecoming. Or, all my different friends from Houston, wherever. I come back to Jacksonville, I was snubbed. So, and I think because Jacksonville has a very unique mentality and it's very much kind of, I don't know, everybody's afraid that they're going to be overlooked, or they're afraid that if they embrace somebody from outside or they raise things on a higher level, they somehow they think it's going to be negative for them. But in the reality, our city will never advance if we don't learn to do the kind of things that you guys are doing now, which is we got to come together and we got to tell the whole story. Because when you tell the whole story, then you realize all the connecting points and how that story can get way more exposure when you start realizing how many people are connected to it. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but.
What is the origin story of 95 South, if you could?
95 South was sort of developed because of Chill Deal Boys got into a situation where they wasn't able to perform under their name anymore. The guy who was, again, we talked earlier about, who initially invested in them,
right,
went and copyrighted the name, behind their back. And of course, being young and in the industry, they didn't understand that you have to make sure that you own your name and everything. So when they started questioning him about residuals and about records on the radio, we have record sales and where's the money? The guy was paying him like $250 a month.
Right.
He had him in a house, a nice house in Orlando, but the money wasn't making sense. So once they started asking the right questions, I guess at the wrong time, he just like, hey, you know what? I own the name. If you guys don't want to work with me, go ahead. You can't have the name. So them, Jay, Mike, and CC, them being the talented individuals they were like, you know what? Not only did he own the name, but he owned their likeness.
Oh man.
So,
gosh,
they said, hey, our dancers, and Mike, who was in the Chill Deal Boys, and Jay, who were the members of the Chill Deal Boys. I was Mike's little brother, and the guy AB was Jay's little brother. So they looked at us and said, hey, you guys want to be a group? He was like, yeah, we were around the studio all the time anyway.
Right.
So we sat down and decided to come up with the name 95 South. We started off as the Jayville Boys, the Duval Boys, and someone, I can't recall who it was, but somebody said 95 South Boys, and we were just like, 95 South. So being that it's the interstate that runs directly through Jacksonville, and it goes from the bottom to the top, and that's where we were initially wanted to go, from the bottom to the top, and take the music from Florida to wherever it would go, and it stuck. 95 South, 95 South. So we're like, cool, that's the name of the group.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. It goes from bottom to the top. I hadn't even thought of it like
from
that.
Maine to Miami.
When did you start playing music? Was you from a musical family?
Yeah. If you ask me, you could say, I don't know, you could say professionally at 16, since I was compensated to do it then. But I mean, for me playing in church all the way, like when I was a youngster, growing up with my mom and my dad, they were a lot in church. My grandparents, like it was a church going family pretty much. Grandmother was a pastor, led a church right in Arlington with the Church of the Living God, the Pillar Ground of the Truth, to where they had a lot of music happening in that church and a lot around that scene, and they were also connected. I found out later on they were also connected in relation to and knowing what's the name of the movie? Is it International House of Prayer?
Oh, okay.
The church is known with pretty much having the trombone choir, if you will.
Right.
So I had all of that influence growing up. If you ask my mother when did I start playing, she'll say with the pots and pans when I was just a baby. So.
And so professionally, basically, when you were 16?
Yes. That was when I got my first call from Leonard Hunt, who's a great organist, to play, or sub rather, at a Shiloh Metropolitan Baptist Church right downtown.
Oh, we were over there singing. God blessed us that the show, the characters. See, it played off Broadway. Now this is God's Trombones by James Weldon Johnson. It played off Broadway for 88 straight weeks.
Oh wow.
And the people were singing and shouting in the aisles the whole time. They stopped because they were tired. They didn't stop because they ran out of money. They had to know.
Right.
They were tired. But after a few years, they decided they were going to try it in another part of the world. So they came. Where were they going? Because it's religious music, and all of the sermons, his trombones, those are the sermons. They are sermons. They're religious.
Right.
So where you going to try this? They wanted to try it in Europe, because Africa, I don't think they were yet quite ready. They still were going through a lot of little coups and carrying ons, and so they wanted to take it up. That's right. It's the cultural seat at that time of at least of the Western world. So they wanted to take it to Europe to see how it would work. And so where were they going to go? So somebody said, let's try Rome. Yeah, I mean Italy. But you got the Vatican there. They don't want all this other kind of. So they said, well, let's try it in a small theater for a short period. If it works, we'll play. If not, then they did. They came there. So they were booked for 2 weeks in a small theater in Rome. I have a picture of me in the paper also there in Rome that I'm rehearsing with our director for this opening night of God's Trombones. So you see how long ago that was. I was younger like you. I was younger than you. I was young like him. And so anyway, we went on for 2 weeks. We could not close doors under 6 months.
Really?
They would not let us go.
Wow.
I mean, every night, packed standing room only. They love our music. They love our true culture, our heritage. That like they say this. Oh, they love cowboy music. What you call it? We call cowboy music. Country music, but they love that real country music. It's from the soul and from the heart. It makes them feel good. You know what I mean? And we Americans have to get out of all this old stupid, ignorant foolishness that we have, trying to separate and destroy. And this, what in the world is going on? And then we call ourselves God's children. It's ridiculous. And those people would come to us, I kid you not, they would come to us crying, red as beets, tears, snot, everything.
Moved.
All down their faces, saying, thank you. Thank you. You made us feel something we didn't know that we had inside. Now, I'm not talking about just the Italians. I'm talking about all over Europe. Because when they saw that the show would go in Italy, they booked us throughout all of Europe. We went to every country over and over and over and over and over again, And I mean, we would be booked 2 and 3 times in a year at the same country, you know what I mean? And the people just couldn't get enough. They loved it. So what I'm saying is that's what made me desire to push our culture, to lift it up, to expose first of all Americans to it, because we need to know, we need that strengthening, we need to feel that something inside that we don't know, that some of us don't know that we have, we need that. And so anyway, what I'm saying is that this is what gets me about La Villa now.
Well, talk about Douglas Anderson in the music ecosystem of Jacksonville and the Southeast. I mean,
well, basically what Douglas Anderson, we've always said we wanted to make sure that we are producing, and not everybody's going to make it, but we want to have produce students that appreciate the arts, and that will become consumers of the arts, and that will keep that tradition going because they understand what it takes to be an artist and also appreciate the arts, So that was part of what Doug Anderson did.
So it's professional school, but also appreciation.
Right. It's and you develop a unique sense of camaraderie, and everybody there is treated on equal. Everybody's interested in what everybody else is doing. It doesn't matter. It could be a musician interested in the next art show. They all support each other.
How does music, jazz and gospel, and your writing music, because you're an arranger and a producer, how does it all come into identity and where you're from? And how did Jacksonville influence that?
I would say Jacksonville influenced it because it actually gave me the space to be able to really authentically find who I am. And be comfortable in that. And have that foundation tested and chipped away every day to where I have a strong enough foundation to be able to stand on. I'm not, funny enough, I was just having a conversation about this on Labor Day. I'm not worried about what I can't do. I know what it is, what I can't do. Every human has their limitations, and that's part of being human. Well, the other part is being able to know those limitations and at the same time still challenge yourself in a way that is healthy for you to be able to still grow. Because although you are limited, that's not an excuse not to grow.
Right.
And you also find out too how many things in your life, because they say that music is life. Well, I mean, what does my life look like? I mean, I'm blessed to be able to be a husband to Jessica Nicole Johnson Lumpkin. Blessed to be able to be a father to Janelle and Jordan and Julia, my 3 daughters. And that's also a part of my sound too.
Right.
Being able to do the studying, to do the work, to find out what it is about my city or what was happening here before I got here, just in terms of the history of La Villa all the way to the Cosmo. I mean, that's, although it's bitter, although it's sad, that's a part of my sound too.
Can you talk a little more about that, about the history?
Yeah, so I mean, even with La Villa, I mean, the fire almost wiped out everything in downtown, but La Villa made it through that fire. But they didn't make it through the next fire, if you will. So when you see it from that point of view, it's like, well, dang, like, you take on all of this, but yet and still, like, because of the color of my skin, I'm denied the right to be able to live in liberty and to be able to prosper and to grow just because of the color of my skin.
Right.
And then that jumped all the way even over to the Cosmo, to where unfortunately rights to the land were actually signed over by a relative way down the line for me, to where he was coerced, pretty much gotten drunk, and coerced to sign papers that would turn over that land.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so that's a part of the music too.
Right.
I mean, unfortunately, but for me, one of my root words that I actually like to carry in my life is the word triumph. And it's also one of the reasons why, again, I moved back here to Jacksonville. And I think, well, I know, until the day I close my eyes, that I'll be on that mission.
I wonder if you could tell us anything about how Jacksonville, the city, and your upbringing here influenced your music and how it, did you express anything that was kind of Jacksonville-centric in your music?
We did. The experiences, there's a song on our first album called Take a Trip Down South. And it was just what we did every day, hanging outside, what our surroundings were. But we didn't focus, we gave you a peep inside, but we didn't dwell on the circumstances.
Right.
We were conscious enough to project what we wanted, and
right.
where we wanted to go. Yeah, it was the projects was what it was,
right.
But we always found the tried to find the positive sides of it, like, the house parties and,
right.
Just being able to go to the skating rink and, the kickball games and,
right.
Flirting with the honeys,
right.
The nice cars and, just the whole Florida vibe, the weather and, So we just wanted to portray that in the music.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And do you think people really resonated with that throughout the South and even farther around?
They did, because people could relate to it. You
Right.
know, like we see people, man, we do our concerts, and they're like, man, you just don't know, man. Your first album was like the soundtrack to my college years,
Right, right.
and you guys don't know how many girls we got over that album, man. Because back then people were dancing, it was nothing to go to a party and ask a girl to dance, and you would just dance until you were just drenched, dance all night. And I think that was the energy we were able to put on those records, and people could relate, and they loved it.
And you kept it hopeful. Was that a conscious decision?
It was because, again, we wanted anyone from 8 to 80.
Right.
We didn't want to be offensive, as offensive as we got was saying booty,
Right.
But I think CeCe Lemonhead, he is one of our producers, and he is working on a book as well, but he had a passage in his book when he was talking about how in our music, the bass was for the dudes, the booty was for the girls. In essence, our music kind of, I don't want to say gave women permission, or it sort of allowed them to sort of liberate themselves a little through the music by dancing. Put a hump in your back and roll.
Right.
Put a hump in your back and roll. And just the beat and the rhythm, just, the girls loved it. And again, that was a time where people were dancing, so, and yeah.
I would say that it is shifting. And shifting by way of Jacksonville Symphony, which just recently started up another division by way of James Jenkins called the Jax Jazz Collective. And we just recently did our first concert, I want to say beginning of June. Yeah, beginning of June. And now we have a series. And talking with James, this was something that was, hearing everything it is that he was telling me about it, I was just like, man, this is clearly like ordered by a power that is higher than me. Because I told him, and just being honest with you all, I told him that, man, listen, there's no reason that you have Grammy nominated artists that leave the city because they are not supported or they're not playing Southern rock. Artist after artist, Douglas Anderson School of the Arts has put out, cats that have played with Snarky Puppy. Going on, moved to New Orleans, moved to New York, moved to Atlanta. They just get out because they really can't necessarily make a living here. Where do I see jazz moving? I see it moving all by those structures that I said, between the Jax Jazz Collective that's now down at the Times Union Center, Jacksonville Jazz Festival, stuff that I told you that I'm doing, things that Daniel Stark is doing, Zach Peister, the owner of Josephine's in Avondale. All of those things, Posting House, the jam sessions, they all start to pile up, and they start to create this. They start to create this heat, and as long as you keep as long as there's a fire and there's enough coals around, you'll have something.
And are you seeing that more today than ever, do you think?
Yes. Yes. Some individuals before that left the city, and I completely understand. They were just like, at the time, me seeing them when I was younger, they complained about the scene, and I get it. It's a city. Like, it's not your job to be able to talk to city council members or to be in the face of the mayor or to have that level of influence, if you will. At the end of the day, creators just want to create. I totally get that. At the same time, I think that there are some of us who are creators and also at the same time are blessed in other areas. And I believe that I'm one of those individuals.
Right.
So it would behoove me, and it would be not wise for me to act in that and to walk in that authority that I believe God has given me. So, yeah.
Chitlin Circuit.
Yes, sir.
Your uncle was clearly, you had to be plugged into the Chitlin Circuit.
Absolutely.
How did he come up? Just he knew people? What was going on?
Okay, let me explain to you. When you want to perform, you have your agents. You contact Mr. Ed. You get out there to Mr. Ed. Hey, can we come in and perform? And such? Sure, come in and perform. They book gigs for them on the Chitlin Circuit. Everything was booked. You moving from city to city to city to city to city on the Chitlin Circuit. So it's easy to make a call. If you coming close to Jacksonville, can we be there on such and such a day? Absolutely. Come in and perform. The 2 spots gonna be sold out.
And usually.
And it was always sold out. Even when he got sick and people started to cheat him out of his money. And my mother would tell him, baby,
Your staff is cheating.
your staff is cheating you, they're doing this. He said, I may be sick, but guess what? They still got to go to my store, buy my groceries, buy here, get this, get this. We take care of our own. We take care of our own. And that's what my mother instilled in me, explaining to me. I'm like, wow. And I listen. I love knowledge. I love listening. Some people don't, but I do. I listen to what my godmother, he had the one pawn shop that all Masons bought their rings from, black or white. He was a 33rd degree Mason. He built the Florida A&M Lodge down from the main lodge here in Jacksonville. Most people don't know that.
So I'd love to know what inspired you to go into that line of artistry. What inspired you to sing?
It's first place is natural. People don't understand because we think of classical music as not being black music or black people not excelling in it. But you see, some of our greatest musicians were African people. Like, believe it or not, what's his name? Beethoven. Beethoven. I have a picture of him on a calendar, but I can't pull it out now. But from the archives in Germany, he was a dark-skinned mulatto.
Wow.
And his father, not his father in the music, his teacher, Franz Joseph Haydn, was also black. And there were, for example, Alessandro Dumas Jr., he was black.
Right.
His mama was African.
He was French, wasn't he? So French.
Yes, he was French.
And they were so a lot of the African countries spoke French. And so that's
yes, but that was because of colonization.
Exactly. Right.
But a lot of African people lived in Europe.
Right.
And in fact, when you are over there and you go to these beautiful palaces and things, you see all these gorgeous paintings, because they have cameras, of these royal families and noblemen and all of these people. And it is very often you see a black child on the photograph with them. And they dress very princely. And so, and Italians ask me, say, you know who that is? You know what that is? I say, a little African or something. They say, well, un hebreo. That's a Hebrew. I think that's what they call the Jews, the Hebrews. Un hebreo, a Hebrew. And they would take these children. Well, it didn't matter if they were Hebrews or what, but they liked to take exotic children, little Japanese. But like in America, my father told me, say it was a great, prestigious, prestige at least, to have like a Japanese servant in
Status symbol.
of a status, right? Here in America, and over in Europe, it was a great status statement to have a black servant, and so they had, but they had other ethnicities too, but they really liked the black ones, and so they you could see them all around, even, I mean, not just in the Latin countries, of course, in Germany and Austria, really Austria, they really like it, and all around. So they had but anyway, I think naturally the music comes to people, human beings.
Right.
But my father happened to have been a great lover of classical music. He lived in Santiago, I told you, and just you quite briefed in a lot of things culturally. And in Santiago they have a very famous and very good opera theater. Did you?
I didn't.
Okay, you bring it up. You'll see all the ballerinas and everything.
Right.
They have a lovely opera theater in Santiago. Well, his godfather was the ticket taker of the opera theater. And so my father went to the opera like 2 or 3 times a week.
Right.
He could hum all of the different arias from the different operas.
Right.
When we were little, he would tell me, this one, see, that's from El Trovatore. See, that's from Rigoletto. See, he would tell me, because he was familiar with them. They were part of his, makeup.
And so you grew up with those tunes as a child,
Right.
that cultural heritage.
I wonder what brought you back to Jacksonville.
So what brought me back to Jacksonville was to just say it straight, to build a scene. I mean, to do exactly what it is or what I'm doing now, which is through the Jazz Discovery Series, impacting the community with the next generation of jazz, which is pretty much hearing Ella Fitzgerald before she becomes Ella Fitzgerald. And then with the JL Institute, which is equipping the next generation of jazz artists. So, yeah.
Now, there's this ecosystem in Jacksonville with La Villa School of Arts and Douglas Anderson, UNF, Jacksonville U, have these strong jazz programs. Why? Why Jacksonville? What happened here? Is there something that you can point to?
Yes, I think it's like all the right things happened at the same time. There was a lot of us that came to Jacksonville right around the same time, and many of us are still here.
Is that because Rich came?
Because Rich came, and Rich brought with him a host of other educators like himself.
Okay.
And but they brought in Marcus Prennup, Noel Friedline, J.B. Scott, Doug Matthews. There was just Carl Poole. There was just a bunch of us that all came in around the same time. And then Carol McQueen had already established herself as a pioneer in developing jazz bands at a very, very young age. Well, that was a passion of mine. I was working with my granddad, and I was playing and learning tunes. I was studying with Rich, and so Carol allowed me to have a jazz band. And so we had 2 jazz bands, 2 middle school jazz bands, which was one unheard of at the time. And so I had the privilege, she allowed me the privilege of writing methods for the kids, and so we would, we talked about, classical music, and
being classically trained, I learned to develop a foundation. So I said, well, we can develop a foundation in jazz. And so I would do, let's develop our sound, but let's do it using a blues progression. Let's develop our sound, but let's make connections to all these scales with chords and cymbals, and let's start teaching these kids about style at an early age and listening. And so these young students, we had them improvising, immediately, doing call and response and teaching them who to listen to. I'd have teachers calling me saying, Mr. Daniels, your student's falling asleep in class. And when I asked him why, he said, you told him to stay up at night and listen to Clifford Brown at night, So I'd be like, oh no.
So I was going to ask you, how do you think downtown influenced your music? So I assume that is gospel, is what got you into gospel music. Do you think that the neighborhoods in Jacksonville influenced your music in any way, in terms of what you grew up playing?
I would say, yes, but not intentionally. And what I mean by that is, my mother's family is connected all the way back to the Kingsley Plantation. The name Bartley. I'm sitting in high school one day and I see the name Bartley pop up in my world history book as we're reading in class. I go home and ask my mom about it. She was just like, yeah, we trace all the way back to the Kingsley Plantation, because it was in there talking about different regions and plantations and things of that nature here in the South. So the name popped up, and so traces all the way back to there. So you're talking about from Negro spirituals, hymns, the roots of the church, all the way to the effects of the blues here in the South. Like, all of that was infused, like, literally within my grandmother's church.
Right.
So, yeah,
well,
it affected me greatly. And then too, I mean, with my mother, she was blessed to be able to go to not only to Bethune-Cookman University, which is where she met my dad, but she also was blessed to be able to go to Juilliard of New York to learn how to sing professionally as a mezzo-soprano. So,
oh wow,
yeah. Now, I was impacted by all of that. All of that happened before I got here.
Well, so those roots are about as deep as they go.
Yeah, and that's just one region of the city now.
Right, Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so, and it does seem to be a specifically Jacksonville thing.
Yes.
Those roots.
Arlington, the Cosmo area, that whole, yes.
Can you tell me if there's anything distinct about the Jacksonville sound in terms of gospel music?
Every region or every group of people, you find this out when you travel to. Mm-hmm. Like, music is all about the culture. Like, the same, I guess you could say, like, if you go to a jam session here in the city, the standard tunes that you would call here wouldn't be the same standard tunes you would call in Detroit. Wouldn't be the same standards you would call in Houston or New York or LA. I mean, yeah, they're standards, but they also become regional because people are people.
Right.
You know, you choose what you vibe with. So for me, the Jacksonville sound in terms of church, for me, it's rooted in the drive of the bass drum for me. And I'm going specifically here with the musical instruments. I mean, singing almost the same song, if you will, for maybe about 10, 15, sometimes 30 minutes in the church. changes you, man.
Right.
Like you start thinking like on another. You start thinking and feeling, and taking all of that experience in that you're feeling at that moment.
Right.
So for me, yeah, it was a big impact for me here in the city, being in various churches, even with my cousin Fred, traveling to churches with him. My Aunt Patsy, who used to play for Bishop C.D. Kinsey, who founded Cathedral of Faith Church of God of Grace, being able to go with those services that they would have in camp meetings and Friday night services and revivals and all of those things. Like my father being a pastor, like it was just, I was always in church, like always around the high time musically, always around a pursuance, like a reviving type of spirit.
Right.
So
Right in the middle of it. Yeah.
Yes.
So, do you think there's a Jacksonville sound? And do you think you had any influence on it? Do you think you kind of stamped out a Jacksonville sound?
Initially, our intentions were to create a sound for Jacksonville through bass. Miami had their bass,
Right.
and what we would try to create was quad. That's where you get 1990 quad. 95 South, first album was Quad City Knock, and we wanted to coin Jacksonville as Quad City and try to create a sound. So I think in our attempt to do that, we did influence, I think, some of the sound when you listen to people like Young Cash and J Dash and a lot of those guys who doing up-tempo music. I think we did, but it didn't stick like Miami bass, because when you think bass, you think Miami bass, because they coined it, they invented it, and they, you know, it's Miami bass. And I think a lot of times we used to get flack, especially in publications, because they would say 95 South, the Miami bass duo. So then people would say, well, they're from Jacksonville, why aren't they saying they're Jacksonville? But it's not that we claimed Miami. We do Miami based music, and we just happen to be from Jacksonville. So, but again, we tried to coin a sound for Jacksonville, which was Quad City. Which again, Quad City Knock, 95 South, 69 Boys, 1990 Quad, and then the Quad City DJs. And so we try to, you know, create a fictional place, which was going to be Jacksonville, which was going to be Quad City. But, you know.
And can you explain for us the quad, the meaning of quad?
Quad are cabinets. These big bass cabinets. They call them quads because they usually come in fours. These huge, they could be 15 or 18 inch subwoofers. And they call them quads. And that's when you get the real, because again, in the projects when we were coming up, you had DJs come and set up these quads. Then you got the ghetto style DJs, which Uncle Luke and Two Live Crew, that DJ, you got Jam Point Express, you set up these big cabinets, they call them quads, and they could be 20 or 30 of them. And they just blast the music, you know what I'm saying, a wall of sound. And we just coined that sound, that bass quad, you know. So sometimes, you know, 95 South, we got the bass and the quad. 95 South hitting so hard. You know, if you like that, pick up the tape, run and tell your friends that them boys got bass for your ace.
Well, that's great. And you can see how, you know, a Miami sound would influence. And just like music always does, it evolves. And it evolves what is typical in whatever region it comes from. And that was the Jacksonville thing. And so you guys grew up learning how to do.
And that's what we listened to. And of course, like I said, I was dancing for a group, Chill Deal, and they were trying to do more of the New York sound. But it just wasn't coming across because those guys wouldn't accept Florida guys trying to rap New York style. And then bass music was starting to catch on. You know, you have people like Magic Mike, who had Cheetah Records, and his guy was selling 500,000 records just out of his trunk. And so we saw him once, and he was like, hey, you guys need to stop doing that. You guys need to get on bass. So then once we decided to do 95 South, we said, let's go do bass music. And in 7 days, we did our first album. 7 days from start to finish.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in '93, down south, things were still kind of coming from up north.
Yeah, because that was the only outlets we had, you know,
Right.
MTV,
Right.
BET, and most of the groups up north were getting all of the play. Because again, bass hadn't gone mainstream.
Yeah.
Not until, you know, Luke did get some mainstream because, again, with the controversy and him going against, you know, the Supreme Court
Right.
for freedom of speech, because his records were so explicit.
Right.
You know, he went up against the Supreme Court and won. And so that's how he got most of his notoriety. And then that's when I think bass started to get that look at the Magic Mike. He started, you know, he was really underground, but then he started to get commercial success, and we just kind of, the timing was perfect.
Right.
The timing was perfect, you know, and I think, you know, our producers and us deciding to, you know, go into bass music at the right time was essential to our success.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I would hope they come with another perspective. And I know that sounds very simple. It's almost to a certain degree, almost kind of sounds kind of lame, but when you really think about it, whether it be a painting or whether it be a video, picture, whatever is displayed before them, I hope that one individual is man enough or woman enough or they enough or them enough to put themselves down and to really take in and absorb what's in front of them and what's being said. I tell my students all the time, there's a big difference between hearing me and listening to me. In order for you to listen, you have to have your defenses down. And I think that's one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest setbacks to art, displaying. Everybody's on guard. You don't have to be on guard once you find out that we actually have the same blood. I'm not better than you. We're all human. We just have different experiences. And we're all trying to get to the same place. So yeah, that's what I would hope somebody or one of my students would come away with.
What I would like to say to them is continue to, how would I put this? Continue to project the positive, you know, project love, do what you love to do. Don't worry about what anybody thinks about who you are or what you do. Just do you.
Right.
Just do you. And I'm actually at that place in my life now, you know. I've evolved as a person, as a man, and the older I get and the more I learn, the more I have to say, you know what, I just have to continue to just move in love.
Right.
Just move in love, move with good energy, and yeah, just move in love.
But it says this too will pass. Not La Villa, but the things that have been wronged about La Villa. I just believe some kind of way we're gonna come through it.